Every life-changing story begins not with careful planning, but with one impulsive decision, one heartbeat where logic loses to instinct. For Emma Sullivan, that heartbeat arrived beneath the glittering chandeliers of Manhattan's grandest gala, where she didn't belong and knew it. Surrounded by billionaires and power players, she wasn't supposed to be seen, let alone remembered. But courage doesn't ask for invitations. It creates its own. That night, 3 martinis and a bruised pride pushed Emma to do something unthinkable, to cross the marble floor and confront the man whose arrogance mirrored everything she despised about the world she was trying to enter, and in that collision of defiance and desire, she did the impossible. She kissed him. 3 seconds, that's all it took for her life to unravel and begin again, because one kiss, even the wrong one, can expose the truth you've been too afraid to face. That single moment shattered the illusion of control she'd built her entire life around. It wasn't the kiss itself that changed her, but what it represented, a rebellion against everything she'd been told to be. For years, Emma had been taught to stay polite, composed, predictable. The world had handed her a script, one where she would live quietly, make safe choices, and never cause waves. But courage is born in the cracks of conformity. That kiss was her declaration of independence, even if she didn't realize it yet. In 3 seconds of madness, she proved to herself that she could act without permission, speak without fear, and dare without apology. Life doesn't reward the ones who wait for the right time. It rewards those who are brave enough to act when their heart demands it, even if it means risking everything they thought they knew. But the universe has a sense of irony. That kiss, meant to be a fleeting act of defiance, became the spark that lit an entire chain of consequences. The man she kissed wasn't just any stranger. He was Asher Kane, the powerful, dangerous billionaire her parents had secretly arranged for her to marry. What began as rebellion turned into destiny. What began as defiance turned into a war between her freedom and her fate. That's what happens when you make a bold move in a world built on restraint. It forces truth to the surface. Suddenly, the girl who only wanted to be seen had the full attention of the most powerful man in the room. And in that attention, Emma discovered something terrifying and exhilarating, that one impulsive act could rewrite not just a night, but an entire future. The kiss was never about romance. It was about awakening. It was the universe's way of shaking Emma awake from the comfort of small dreams. It forced her to confront who she truly was beneath the politeness, beneath the expectations, beneath the fear. Because sometimes life doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply throws you into a moment that demands your evolution. Emma's kiss became her catalyst. It pulled her into a world of luxury, manipulation, and emotional warfare, but it also pulled her closer to her own power. She learned that courage doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it's messy, impulsive, and wild. But courage is never wasted. That one reckless kiss forced her to choose between living safely and living truthfully. And once you taste freedom, even for 3 seconds, safety never feels satisfying again. And that's the lesson buried beneath her story, that one small act of defiance can become the turning point of your life. We're all one decision away from transformation, one moment away from becoming the person we were too afraid to be, one act of courage away from rewriting our entire story. For Emma, it was a kiss, a 3-second rebellion that set fire to her carefully constructed world. For you, it might be a choice, a confession, a risk you've been too afraid to take. But remember this: change never arrives politely. It begins in chaos, in mistakes, in moments that make no sense at all. And only later do we realize they were the beginning of everything. One kiss can change everything, not because it's perfect, but because it wakes you up to who you really are. And once you awaken, there's no going back. Power, it's one of the most misunderstood words in the world. People chase it their whole lives, believing it lies in money, status, or the ability to command others. But true power doesn't come from control. It comes from choice. For Emma Sullivan, power had always belonged to people like Asher Kane, those who could buy buildings, dictate futures, and make decisions that changed lives with a single phone call. She had grown up believing she was powerless, a woman surviving in a world ruled by men with sharper suits and colder hearts. Yet, life has a way of testing the stories we tell ourselves. When Asher tried to claim her as part of a business deal, when she became a name on a contract instead of a person with a heartbeat, Emma discovered a power she didn't know she had. The power to say no, the power to walk away from everything that didn't align with her truth, because control may belong to others, but choice, that will always belong to you. It's easy to confuse dominance with strength. The world often rewards those who can manipulate, threaten, or overpower. But Emma learned that real strength isn't about making others bend. It's about standing tall when someone tries to break you. Asher could buy her building, her business, even her silence, but he couldn't buy her will. That's where his control ended and her power began. Every time she stood up to him, every time she refused to be treated like property, she reclaimed a part of herself that she'd long forgotten. Because power isn't the ability to control others. It's the ability to control yourself, your emotions, your responses, your boundaries. Emma learned that strength is silent, steady, and deeply personal. It's not about how loud you can be. It's about how unshakable you can remain when the world demands your surrender. The most dangerous thing you can give to someone else is your permission. Permission to decide your worth. Permission to define your limits. Permission to tell your story for you. For too long, Emma had allowed life to make her decisions, parents, expectations. Even desperation had dictated her path. But the moment she took back that permission, everything changed. She realized that power isn't inherited. It's earned through self-respect. When you refuse to let fear control your choices, you become unstoppable. The people who appear powerful on the outside often crumble the moment they lose control. But those who understand the quiet art of choosing peace over pride, truth over comfort, freedom over approval, those are the ones who can never truly be conquered. Because choice is the one form of power no one can take from you unless you give it away. Asher Kane's empire was built on control, but Emma's strength came from something far more enduring: authenticity. He could manipulate outcomes, but she could influence hearts. He could close deals, but she could open wounds he didn't know he had. In trying to dominate her, he met someone who refused to play by the same rules, and that terrified him because Emma didn't fight for control, she fought for choice. The power she carried wasn't loud or visible, but it was magnetic. It forced everyone around her to question their own chains. Even Asher, a man who'd spent his life mastering control, found himself losing it in her presence, not because she overpowered him, but because she reminded him what freedom felt like. And that's the paradox of true power. Once you understand it's not about control, you stop trying to dominate. You start trying to create. So, remember this. Power is not the ability to bend others to your will. It's the courage to remain yourself when the world tries to change you. It's the strength to choose your own path when fear whispers that you can't. It's the freedom to walk away from what no longer serves your peace, no matter what it costs you. Like Emma, you will face moments where your control slips, where the world tries to write your story for you. But in those moments, you must remember, No one can truly take your power unless you hand it over, because power isn't control, it's choice. The choice to be honest, the choice to be free, the choice to live a life that belongs entirely to you. And that's a kind of power that no amount of money or influence can ever replace. Love, the most beautiful contradiction in existence. It's what every heart longs for, and what every soul secretly fears, because real love isn't safe. It's not predictable or polite. It doesn't arrive neatly wrapped in comfort or convenience. It arrives like a storm, unexpected, disruptive, and impossible to ignore. Emma Sullivan never planned to fall in love with Asher Kane. How could she? He was the embodiment of everything she stood against: control, power, dominance. Yet, somewhere between their battles and bargains, between anger and attraction, love began to bloom in the cracks of their chaos. Not the soft kind that asks for permission, but the kind that demands transformation. Love didn't make her weak. It forced her to confront her fears. Because love, when it's real, isn't a fairy tale, it's a battlefield between who you were and who you could become. Emma had always believed that love meant safety, that it should protect, not challenge. But Asher shattered that illusion. With him, love wasn't gentle, it was honest. It exposed every wall she'd built around her heart, every scar she'd tried to hide beneath independence. For the first time, she understood that fear doesn't vanish when love arrives, it amplifies. The closer someone gets to your heart, the louder fear whispers. You'll lose yourself. You'll get hurt, you'll fall too hard, but freedom begins where fear ends. Emma had to learn that love and freedom aren't enemies, they are two halves of the same truth. You cannot truly love if you're still afraid to be seen, and you cannot be free if you're still running from love. So she stopped running. She faced the terrifying beauty of connection, and in doing so, she discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form. Asher, too, was fighting his own war between fear and freedom. For a man who had built empires on control, love was the one thing he couldn't command. It stripped him bare, exposed the man beneath the title. With Emma, he was no longer Asher Kane, billionaire and heir. He was simply a man learning to feel. And that terrified him more than losing everything he owned. Love demanded something his world had never asked of him: surrender. Not the surrender of power, but of pride. To love Emma meant letting go of the armor that had protected him all his life. It meant admitting he wanted more than success. He wanted belonging. And that's the cruel magic of love. It doesn't just show you who someone else is. It shows you who you are when the masks fall away. It teaches you that real freedom isn't about walking alone. It's about finding someone you can walk beside without losing your way. Love tested them both in ways they never expected. It pushed Emma to choose trust over control, and it pushed Asher to choose honesty over dominance. They fought, not because they hated each other, but because they were terrified of what they felt. Fear told them that love would destroy them, but love whispered that maybe destruction was the only way to rebuild something true. Their story became proof that love isn't always soft or easy. Sometimes it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Because to love is to risk being broken, misunderstood, or changed beyond recognition. But those who dare to love despite fear, who fight through doubt and ego, are the ones who discover a deeper kind of freedom, the kind that can only exist when you stop needing control and start choosing connection. And that's what Emma and Asher's story reminds us, that love isn't a prison, it's a paradox. It will terrify you and heal you at the same time. It will strip away your illusions, but it will also give you wings. The battle between fear and freedom is the very essence of love. Because to love someone deeply, you must be brave enough to risk yourself completely. You must face the possibility of heartbreak with the hope of wholeness. Love is not about possession, it's about partnership. It doesn't demand you give up your freedom. It shows you what true freedom feels like when you're seen, understood, and accepted exactly as you are. Fear will always whisper that it's safer to stay guarded, but freedom, real freedom, begins the moment you open your heart anyway. And when you do, you'll realize what Emma did, that the scariest love stories are always the most beautiful ones, because they don't just change your heart, they set your soul free.